Hello again from Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin, broadcasting from Rigel Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. Fired Up is on our website, firedupwithbobirwin.com, and on the American Guns and Glory Network. It also appears separately on YouTube and numerous other media. A new show is posted every Thursday at around 5 p.m. Pacific time. The audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. You can check out all the stations at KELY1230.com to find the station in your area, none of which are in Clark County, but we're still working on it. Questions and comments, you may send an email to me at bob@firedupmail.com. Again, that's bob@firedupmail.com. Or leave a message on my office recorder, 702-257-1060. If you leave contact information, we'll respond by email, text, or telephone. Questions directed to my guest this week. He'll give his contact information in just a few minutes. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States, rarely truthfully covered by any mainstream media. We always present a few of those for our listeners' education. Most are good shootings, some are questionable, a couple today, yeah. Sometimes they're just plain wrong, but all are educational for those of you who own a firearm to protect your home or carry one on the street. Individual incidents are generally adjudicated under local law. So if the advice we give here may or may not apply to listeners in different jurisdictions. And more importantly, stories are often paraphrased for clarity by translation from what I call police jargon, lawyer speak, you know what that one is, and regional accents back into standard American English. The incidents are as reported, except the names of the participants are generally omitted. My guest today is California and Nevada attorney Donald J. Green. Don, if you would, a bit of your background.
Okay, well, thank you, Bob. For those of you who have not seen this show before or have not visited some of the gun shows where Bob and I are participate in here in Clark County, my name is Don Green, and I'm a lawyer now practicing 37 years in California and Nevada. The emphasis of my practice involves firearms at all levels, from representing people who are charged with illegally possessing firearms to those who want to sell firearms. And we represent people in gun transactions, and we do represent federal firearms licensees and gun shows. We're heavily involved in litigation in California on the magazine ban, which is now pending in the United States District Court for the Southern District of California in San Diego. And another magazine ban case, which is pending but stayed in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of California, based in Sacramento. We'll be involved more than likely in some litigation coming up in Nevada regarding various nuances of the background check law and or the antique law provisions for background checks or the red flag laws. You can reach me directly on my cell 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 702-409-8239. The latest text that I got I got one this morning at, I believe it was 12 a.m. this morning, March 5th, 2020. So I do wake up to respond to calls and texts.
Yes, he does. The NBC 25 News, a reporter named Molly Jurasek, reported on February 28th, 20 in Delavan, Illinois. A shooting took place just after 8 o'clock in the morning. Police report they were called to a rural home on Boynton Road. The 41-year-old resident said he heard someone yelling outside. He went out to see who it was or what it was. He encountered a 41-year-old man who was the one who was yelling and screaming, apparently at air. The investigation revealed the yelling man threatened the resident, charged at him, and bit him on the face and head. The resident then shot the 41-year-old in self-defense. That's what he said he did, and he had an opinion. The Tazewell County State's Attorney confirmed that the resident who fired the fatal shots was also the Tazewell County Public Defender, not a deputy public defender, the public defender. It is unknown if the two men involved knew each other at all. They had never met before, no information on that, but the shooter did not know this individual. The deceased attacker was from rural San Jose, Illinois, and he was pronounced dead just after 10 p.m. at the scene. The case is still under investigation. The incident wherein it appears the deadly force was, an incident where it appears the deadly force was justified against an apparently unarmed attacker. The shooter would certainly have been aware of local use of deadly force laws, you think. There's going out the door, my opinion, going out the door to see what someone is yelling about is a reasonable reaction. Unlike the police who carry all sorts of less than lethal weapons, the homeowner cannot be expected to be carrying a plethora of different weapons at all times. Obviously, you can second guess this and say you had a pepper spray, it would have been smarter, or a taser or so forth. You're not carrying all that stuff when you're in your house. So that seems to me to be a reasonable event. But what do you think, Mr. Green?
I'm reminded of the movie In Cold Blood. Remember, this was a rural home in Kansas in that movie. Here, the police specifically point out 8 o'clock at night, rural home in this county in Illinois. So was this man going door to door, or did he pick out this home in particular, or did he know the Tazewell County Public Defender? When the homeowner goes to investigate, as Bob pointed out, that's reasonable. And that's the standard that your listeners and your viewers have to look at. That's my job. Was your action reasonable at that moment? Now, if he came out ready to fight, a semi-automatic shotgun in one hand, AR-15 in the other, all kinds of bandoliers with ammo, that's not reasonable. But notice what happened. The man threatened the resident and then rushes towards the resident and bites the resident in the face and the head. The homeowner then shoots the victim, or shoots the perpetrator. And Bob is taught for over almost 40 years that most concealed weapons permits shootings 3 feet, 3 shots, 3 seconds. This illustrates that great bodily harm, that the threat of great bodily harm or death doesn't have to come when someone's carrying a weapon. That is, the deadly force doesn't have to be a weapon itself. Fists, teeth, hands, feet. Arguably demonstrated in this case. So I think that this Tazewell County Public Defender probably has a good self-defense defense. Although someone on the civil end might file some papers saying that he could have shot, or Bob, as Bob points out, less lethal means, or why did he go out in the first place without just calling the police? But I think that this shooting is going to be upheld, even in California. Again, rural area, it's at night, homeowners where he's supposed to be, and is bit in the face and the head prior to the shots being fired.
I cannot imagine the reaction here when you see there's no mention of a weapon, and it turned out he was unarmed, I believe. You think, well, you know, I'm pointing my gun, the guy will go away. A huge percentage of the bad guys do that, and this guy charges you and bites you on the face. I feel an insanity plea defense coming. This guy obviously needed some help. We're going to have a brief word now from some of our friends and associates. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Freestyle Martial Arts, located at Jones and Russell here in Las Vegas. You can reach them at 702-551-9009. That's 702-551-9009. CCS Gunsmithing. Chris Eifelt, the man who does all the NRA help, he's at 2216 South Rainbow Boulevard near Sahara. He can be reached at 702-365-1732. Once again, 702-365-1732. Jerry Creed, a trust attorney. If you have a firearms trust or need one, this is your guy. You can reach Jerry at 702-806-7777. That is 702-806-7777. CCW Maggie is found all over the internet. You can reach her by phone at 702-375-5900. That's 702-375-5900. All sorts of firearms training, ladies only classes. She is the best of the best. Call CCW Maggie. And we are back. This next story comes to us from WVTM TV 13, a reporter named Jimmy Sanders, same name as our next president, reported on February 28th this year in Walker County, Alabama. The sheriff's office said several residents in an area reported that a man was prowling multiple homes on January 31st. When responding to the call, deputies said the suspicious man was recognized by a homeowner and had apparently been there in the area recently, breaking into cars. One of the residents in this Boldo neighborhood then shot him in the leg. We'll get on with that later on. The injured prowler fled the scene on foot. The deputies were able to find him quickly. Paramedics were called, and he was transported to Brookwood Baptist Hospital in nearby Jasper, Alabama. The investigators were informed that this prowler had broken into and taken items from multiple vehicles in the area. The sheriff said he is in Walker County Jail on numerous counts of theft crimes. He's expected to face more serious charges as the investigation continues. This incident may prove to be a non-prosecuted shooting in rural Alabama. Most of us would certainly like to shoot thieves that are in the act of stealing our stuff. I know we all would. But virtually every other jurisdiction in America would look for the threat of death and great bodily harm before the deadly force was used. I hope the guy gets off, personally, but I just can't see that even in rural Alabama, but maybe so. Mr. Green?
I agree with you, Bob. They're going to have a hard time. This homeowner or this resident who shot the perpetrator is going to have a definite problem in California. Because as you point out, where is the threat of great bodily injury or death? Breaking into cars is generally not justification. This is a damage to property incident. Conversely, if you are the victim and you're inside the car, you just pulled up with your wife and kids or your grandkids, you pulled up to the house, it's 8 o'clock at night, you're in rural Alabama, somebody runs up to the car, they're smashing into, they're trying to smash the window, they've got something in their hands, or even if they don't have something in their hands, and the neighbors across the street are saying, hey, these people have been doing it all along, then there's a different story. Perhaps your wife or your significant other who has a a concealed weapon permit or is allowed to have the weapon in the car can shoot. But if there's damage to the vehicle, but also it's coupled with a threat, a perceived, viable, discernible threat at that moment. In California, I think the resident who shot the perpetrator in the leg is going to be in jail for attempted murder, discharge of a firearm in a residential area. In Nevada, excuse me, in Nevada, with our current leadership in the district attorney's office, I can see a substantial question being presented as to whether or not this guy's going to get charged in Nevada. That is the other resident who shot the perpetrator. I think it's 50-50. I can't say whether it's going to be a go or a no-go for prosecution, but I think definitely in California, this homeowner would have a problem for the reasons stated.
And civil lawsuits?
So,
for
definitely
damage?
a civil lawsuit. You didn't have to shoot me. All I was doing was breaking into the cars. You could have given me some. You could have given me some tea and a Sprout sandwich, and we could have sang Kumbaya all together. But you didn't have to shoot me.
This kind of story, when I see it, makes me wonder, don't they have televisions in Alabama where they watch news media and things like that?
No, there's only reruns of Andy and Mayberry.
May well be. Yeah. Don Knotts could shoot him.
With one bullet.
With his bullet. Anyway, we are... I can tell you for one thing, the people who are involved in this shooting didn't ever watch this show. That's for sure. We're going to break now for a brief word from some of our friends and associates. We'll be right back. Attorney Donald J. Green, a common guest of mine on Fired Up. He can be reached at 702-409-8239. He specializes in gun case litigation. He is your man, Don Green, 702-409-8239. At Ricardo's Restaurant, where you'll usually find me eating lunch every day if I could get there, they're at the corner of Flamingo and Decatur here in Las Vegas. You can reach them at 702-227-9100. That's 702-227-9100. And Battlefield Vegas, my new kind of home for this show. They're on Circus Drive, directly behind the Circus Hotel and Casino. You can find them there with CCW classes and an amazing place for gun rentals, everything you could possibly imagine. Check out, if you're in town as a tourist, check out battlefieldvegas.com. And we are back. This third story is got a lot of unusual stories today. This is from WFMY News 2, reported on the 29th of February this year, a week and a half ago, in Greensboro, North Carolina. The Greensboro PD reports an 18-year-old tried to rob a local convenience store on Summit Avenue at gunpoint. One of the owners told the media, while I'm doing this story, there were several owners. It's a family business. And when I say in the story the owner, it involves 3 or 4 different people that are all the owner. It's a family business. So rather than differentiate all their first names, we'll call them all the owner. One of the owners told media there were 3 or 4 customers in the store, and the guy came in and put a gun on all the customers and made everyone come behind the counter. Okay. While the store employees and customers were huddled behind the counter, just behind the register, another unsuspecting person walked into the store. The robber grabbed her by the neck and brought her back behind the counter too. The owner added that suddenly one of the customers took advantage of the distraction of him fighting with that woman, pulled out their own gun and fired shots at the suspect. He said the customer shot him 4 or 5 times in like, quote here, 30 to 45 seconds. The Greensboro police said bullets ended up shattering glass and piercing the store's wall. The suspect was the only person hit. The 18-year-old suspect was taken to the hospital where he later died from his injuries. The owner told the media, "I wish it could have ended differently. Personally, I don't want to see an 18-year-old kid die. He didn't even start his life yet." That was just very, very poor decision on his part in a state like North Carolina where everyone has guns. The Greensboro police said the investigation is ongoing. Of course, this is a very recent story. Comments here, the customer is certainly a hero. He's also extremely lucky that none of his rounds found an innocent bystander. Under the stress of a real-life threatening situation, your marksmanship skills are usually crappy. They're usually 20-30% of what they should be. The owner's estimate of the shots taking 30 to 45 seconds is likely a huge time distortion caused by his stress. Also, picture this really happening, and he takes between 30 and 45 seconds to fire 4 shots. Nonsensical. If you're involved in something like this, try to clear the background of innocent bystanders before firing. Mr. Green, there's a lot of meat here.
Yes, there is. First, an 18-year-old with a firearm is still a threat. You don't have time to check ID. There's a threat of great bodily injury or death by his presentation of the weapon and by his actions towards the female patron. Now, as to the man who shot this 18-year-old, there was a specific threat to him. He's in the confined area behind the counter in what we can only assume is a small convenience store at the size of an average 7-Eleven or a Circle K or Sinclair. When the young man goes in there, he was already specifically intending to commit harm or to present a situation where people would perceive that they were going to be harmed or even killed. Now, did the particular customer have to shoot at that moment? Well, his life was threatened. Contrast that from the situation we had in Arizona about 10 years ago where that senator, her husband was, or that representative where her husband was shot. There were 3 people in that crowd who had concealed weapons permits under Arizona law, yet none of them fired their shot. Why? Because the shooter, although he was shooting at certain people, did not present a specific articulable threat to those people or their family members. Now, had their family member been over where the food truck is, where the shooter was shooting in that general direction, that changes the dynamics of this whole case. So that distinguishes this from these goody two-shoes and these tree huggers who are going to say, well, he didn't have to get shot, he was just a kid. So, and then Bob points out this 30 or 45 seconds. In a trial I had several years ago, there was like, the guy said it took about a minute in between shots. So I brought in a stopwatch and clicked it right in front of the witness. Then I stopped it at a minute and I said, was that the length of time? No, it was much quicker. Boom, boom, boom. So what difference did it make? It undercut the accuracy and severely and seriously undermined the credibility of this, this witness who said he saw all of this and it took this amount of time. 30 or 45 seconds in a shooting, Bob, is an eternity.
Yeah.
And you teach people that it's going to take 3 or 4 seconds, 3 or 4 shots, and the man's right on top of you.
Yep.
So I think that this is going to be a good shooting in Nevada. more than likely a good shooting in California. Although the guy should have been talking about this 30 or 45 seconds, because that could be used in a civil case to say, then you had the ability to rationalize and think about it and decide not to shoot the 18-year-old.
Right? You deliberated for this long
Exactly.
before each shot, when really it's a panic shooting. Things are very much distorted at shooting scenes when you talk to the witnesses. They're just, trust me, you'll talk to 3 people and think you were at 3 different shootings. It's amazing. I want to remind everybody that Don Green and I will be at the Western Trails Gun Show on March 21 and 22. That's a Saturday and Sunday in Boulder City at the Boulder Creek Golf Club. They haven't had one before. It's at 1501 Veterans Memorial Drive in Boulder City. You can find it online if you talk to anybody at Boulder City, their Chamber of Commerce or whatever. But it's at their golf club in the middle of Boulder City. It's right down by the airport in Boulder City when you go to look at a map. As you drive into Boulder City, you will cross the street. It's called Veterans Memorial Drive. And get on it and drive right down there. You can check out our recent shows at firedupwithboberwin.com. It contains dozens of our recent episodes. Please patronize our friends and supporters. They keep us on the air. We'll be back next Thursday on our website, firedupwithboberwin.com, on YouTube, at the American Guns and Glory Network, and numerous other websites, television and radio stations. When watching any media, just click on subscribe, and the new shows will be sent to your computer or phone automatically. Please Please tell your friends about these broadcasts. My memorabilia that I used to sell at the gun shows is now for sale. My shirts and books and hats and so forth at Battlefield Vegas, just behind Circus Circus on the Las Vegas Strip. And remember, the audio portion is repeated on the Nevada Talk Network all across Nevada on Saturdays at noon. Check the stations at KELY1230.com. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you so much for supporting Fired Up. We try. Have a good day.